Dix would have been polishing his gear, cleaning his clothes and his possessions. He's not obsessive about it, but his military background does mean he does like to follow a certain routine when possible, and just keeping things in a sense of order.
And you do have some time, some quiet days where nothing really happens until a letter arrives.
Come in.
And opening the door, there is the semi-self-proclaimed steward of your headquarters, Algot Fisk, who is holding a letter in his hand and looking somewhat apologetic, says, "I am sorry, sir. I did not know if I was disturbing any prayers or something, but here." And he hands you a letter. It is not addressed to either of you by name. It simply has the address of where you are and to whom it may concern.
It seems we are required once more.
Oh, yeah?
Because things can never be said. And he will hand you the letter.
Can't these people say anything simply? I mean, if he was so urgently after our assistance, why would he then go on to write something the length of a Bible?
Ask that man, not me.
A forest owner and industrialist, doesn't that sound like two completely different things?
I mean, he owns the land he's cutting down.
I guess there is that. I think we're on the wrong side in this one.
So you believe we should just not go?
To be honest, my friend, I'm not exactly sure. I have the strong impression that money is what this individual cares about the most, and his idea of obtaining a rich and fertile area is so that, as you said, he could own the land and therefore cut it down. If he has ran into a Vaesen, it would probably be a forest variety, which is going to take unkindly to the idea of the pillaging of their home. I'm not sure I disagree with them.
I would say it depends on the Vaesen. Some can live in harmony, some cannot.
Well, it would be unfair of us to put our good overlord's efforts and work during the week to waste. So we should at least go and hear out this august individual.
To the modus of transportation.
So it's not specified in the letter, but they specified to me. So I'm going to say included in the letter are some train tickets, along with a note that you can get part of the way by train. It'll be about a day's journey just on the train. It'll be 2 more days in a carriage, and this is not to get to your final destination. This is simply to get to the village where you're meeting Mr. Von Meyer, and from there he will be able to send you on to the village he actually wants you to get to. It is very remote.
I will at least get my gear together, and then, once ready, await the priest.
I would like to research.
Okay, what are you interested in learning?
General area, landscape.
Okay. This one I won't make you roll for, because you can't find anything about the village of Farnsta. And you do know he said in his letter it is a remote area. It's very forested, very, very lush. You get the sense it's pretty far away from anything else. And it sounds like a small village. There's just nothing written about it.
Then I'll do the fear one. I did like that one. I did that
Just
last time.
douse them in holy water. All right, you can spend some time praying then before going.
I did already say I was maintaining my gear, so I will take the +2 on the revolver. Dixon enjoys the train ride. He seems to like trains, the mechanical aspect of it, and also the journey itself.
I was gonna say he would be like writing in a notebook or something.
The scenery you pass by on the train, you're heading north, and you definitely notice that the area becomes more forested as you go. You are definitely heading not away from civilization necessarily, but into a somewhat more remote area. And you do know that the reason why you can only go part of the way by train is that you are going to the end of the railroad, as far north as it goes, and then you will have to continue on by carriage from there. Well, after your time on the train and then by carriage, which isn't as bad as you first thought, as it turns out you actually stopped in villages to sleep for the night, so you didn't have to try and sleep in a bumpy carriage. You finally arrive in the small town of Harnosand, and it is not difficult to find the sawmill that Mr. Von Meyer asked you to meet him at. Steam engines and the shouts of workers fill the air, and the area is a hive of activity. The sawmill is right where the Angerman River meets the sea, so you see both logs being floated down the river and timber being loaded onto cargo ships. What would you like to do? You stand outside a sawmill.
I suppose enter the sawmill?
The sawmill as a whole gives off an air of industry and modernity, but the office that you are led into, and you presume to be the office of August von Meyer, has a more classic and luxurious feel. Leather, polished wood, intricately woven carpet, everything seems expensive. Von Meyer sits at his desk and stands to greet you when you enter. He is an elegantly dressed man in his 50s with a large, well-kept mustache. Good afternoon. I hope your journey was pleasant?
It was not bad. I quite enjoyed the train.
Very good. I quite like trains. I find them a fine example of progress.
I hear many countries do so treat the railroad as a sign of success.
Yes, well, it hasn't quite made its way up here, as I'm sure you are aware, but hopefully. Can I get either of you anything to eat? Anything?
I could do with a coffee if you have said beverage.
Yes. And he looks to Alvon to see if he wants anything.
Vaughn will grab his tea.
Very good. And he gestures over for a man who's sitting at a smaller desk in the corner you take to be some sort of assistant or secretary, and he sends him off to get something, and a few moments later, a tray with a cup of coffee and a cup of tea is brought in and placed before the two of you.
Dixon will take his coffee and slowly drink it as he examines the room and the individual.
I assume you read my letter, as you are here.
Quite.
Well, what do you make of it?
Well, your letter was not very descriptive.
What do you wish to know? I can tell you anything that I myself know.
What was the beast?
That I do not know. That is a reason that I have called for you.
What was the description of the beast?
Mr. Lindesgold, who saw the beast, well, he is not... Well, he has not been able to provide many details. He speaks at great length about its red eyes. That would be the most distinguishing feature I would say that any of us are aware of.
How big was it? Was it humanoid, male or female? Their red eyes is really not much to go on, sir.
Look, Niels was the only one who saw the thing, and he's practically driven mad, so there is very little I can give you. You can try and speak with him if you wish. I regret that you will be very unlikely to glean anything of use.
And where is he?
He is here in the sawmill. We've had to confine him, as it were. He's become rather unpredictable?
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Why has he become unpredictable? Surely you've had someone of a medical persuasion examine him?
Yes, medically, there is nothing wrong with him, aside from some scratches. They thought it could have been him riding through the forest, as he did, in a hurry to return here. As I said, he seems to have been driven mad.
I guess we should attempt to talk to him at the very least.
You are welcome to, although I repeat, I fear you will not be likely to learn anything helpful. Is there anything else I can tell you before you...
Are there any legends of the land?
Not that I know of. Other villages in the region say that it isn't such a bad thing, that the village of Farnsta largely keeps to themselves. There are some rather dark rumors about the place, as I understand, but I have not been told any of them myself.
Avon will turn to Dixon. Is there anything you wish to know?
I take it from your letter that you had sent these two men to the village to get them to sell and move.
Well, certainly no one has to move if they do not wish to. When I purchase land for the purpose of industry, I hire the locals for those projects. It really benefits all parties involved. Employment for them, the local source of labor for me, and I would be lying if I said it didn't also tend to curry favor with the locals. But yes, I sent Gottfried and Niels to purchase land on my behalf.
And were there instructions to do it aggressively if they said no?
Certainly not.
Well, that's good, sir, but I do not mean to seem indelicate, but it is important for us to understand the situation that we are going into.
Farnsta has, forests, and a lot of them. As the owner of a sawmill, this is obviously very interesting to me. Now, the village actually has its own sawmill of sorts. Smaller and, let us say they have not embraced progress. My only wish is to purchase the land and employ the locals if they do not wish to sell. They are not the only village surrounded by forest. Most of the north of Sweden is, as of yet, forested, and it would take me many lifetimes were I to even attempt to cut down every tree. I have no desire to do so. If they do not wish to sell, someone else will.
That is good to know. Thank you for your honesty.
My main interest is I do still wish to purchase the land if doing so is a possibility. There are other options, of course, but I have already established lines of communication with this village. There are some interested parties, from what I understand. And, of course, one of my employees is still missing. The other seems insane. I do not know what has caused this.
And what is the main thing that you would like us to find out?
What it is and deal with it, however one does such a thing, and, well, as I mentioned in my letter, if you wish to take over negotiations of the sale on my behalf, I would certainly pay you extra.
You can certainly look into the beast, but no guarantees about the negotiation. That is not our specialty.
I understand. Now, this village is very small. There is nothing like an inn there, so accommodations have been made for you to stay at the house of the woman who owns the local sawmill. Her name is Marta Karlstrom, and he hands you a large pouch, and you can tell that it is filled with money. This is to compensate her for her trouble.
All of it?
Yes, you will receive a separate payment. Do you require payment up front?
If how much we were to pay her, I am fine with giving her the bag, if that's what was agreed upon.
Yes. Now, is there anything else, or did you wish to try and speak with poor Niels?
I do believe we would like to speak to poor Nils. While the medical did not work, maybe the spiritual will.
Certainly. And he leads you to not a room, because he has not let you into it, but to a door. And you can see that Niels Lindskold is currently being kept in a locked room, from what you understand, for fear that he will harm himself or someone else. Looking through the window on the door, you can see that efforts have been made to ensure his comfort. A soft bed has been brought in, and you can see books and plates of food which all seem untouched. The man himself, thin and pale, is sitting on the edge of the bed and muttering something you can't make out. And Von Meyer sort of gestures out the window on the door and says, I would suggest trying to speak to him through here. He has been violent. I do not think he means to, but as I said, unpredictable.
Has he eaten anything?
Not today, at least. He seems to have very little interest in eating.
And the medical professionals had no idea what caused this?
There is nothing physically wrong with him, as I said, aside from the scratches. And looking through the window, you can see that his face and arms are covered in scratches. And as he had said as well, that the doctor had theorized it was scratches from tree branches or bushes being gained as he rode through the forest. That definitely seems plausible. You do not think they are like the claw marks of some creature or something. They don't look that uniform. He just appears to have... If he'd walked into a thorn bush, he could have got these kinds of scratches. I assume it is... I do not know, shock or something, but the doctor, all he could suggest was rest, really.
And exactly how long has he been like this?
Well, ever since he returned a few days ago.
Okay. It seems his state looks much worse than I thought it would. Dixon, do you have anything you wish to know?
I'm sure there's many a thing, but as much information about the beast in question. We're going in a little blind at the moment.
As I said, you are free to try and ask him. I would simply request you do so from here.
Niels, would you mind coming to the window?
And as you speak, he slowly turns his head to look at you, and you see his eyes are wide in terror, and he does not really respond. He just stares at you, and then very slowly he stands up and walks over to the door.
We wish to ask you some questions about what you saw.
I saw eyes, red, and it was terrible.
How many red eyes?
many. No, no. One, two eyes.
And how big was the monster?
The beast was huge. It was large, bigger than a wolf.
Did it have a tail or a muzzle?
I do. I was
Did it
running.
chase after you?
I don't know.
Was it fast?
Yes. Yes.
How did he escape?
From what we can gather, he fled the house he was staying in the middle of the night, jumped onto the nearest horse, and rode here as fast as he could. Part of the reason why I have given you so much to pay for your stay is to compensate Marta for the loss of the horse.
And he was the only one who saw it?
As far as I am aware, I was not present, and he looks at Niels. He seems to be trying to choose his words carefully here. And my other employee has not returned, so I have no way of knowing if he saw the thing.
Where did the other employee set out to?
They both were staying in the same village.
At the same location?
Yes.
And have you tried
Up to
to
you.
talk to Marta?
Marta does not know where he is.
Nothing is ever easy.
That is true, sir. That is most definitely true.
Suppose we should set out to the village. They're our only other lead.
I agree. Getting boots on the ground at this point, we need to start to see the lay of the land.
Very well, if you wish to leave now, we can certainly make that happen. It will be another day's travel to reach the village. I have a carriage prepared for you.
Very good.
I have no objections.
It takes another day of travel to reach Farnsta, and the farther you travel, the thicker the trees become, and the worse the roads get. It is night when you arrive, but from what you can see in the moonlight, the village is mainly made up of plain wooden buildings. The exception is a stone church, which looks very old. The carriage brings you to the home of Marta Karlström, who you understand to be somewhat of a prominent figure in the community. Her house is old and very decorative, with intricate nature motifs carved into the dark wood. And a woman opens the door. You assume her to be Marta. She is a somewhat stern-looking lady in her 40s, with blonde hair pulled back into a neat bun. She smiles as she sees you, which brings a friendlier look to her severe features. And as she opens the door, you can see that the nature carvings continue inside the house as well. The whole building is very, very decorative. Welcome. I assume you are the ones that August said would be coming.
That is correct. I am Dixon Hardy, and my companion here can speak for himself, but he is a man of the cloth.
And she smiles and nods. I am Marta Karlström. A pleasure to meet the two of you. Do you need anything? I understand you've come from, well, it's a long journey. Food? I can show you to your rooms.
I would not say no to some form of food and drink if you have something available.
Yes. And she rushes off to a room you assume to be the kitchen and is speaking to someone in there and comes back and says, "Food is on the way. Is there anything else that I can assist you with?"
If you can show us our rooms, we will have some questions if you will be willing to answer them after we have settled in.
Certainly, if there's anything I can answer. Right this way. And she leads you upstairs, and you get the sense that it's not an inn, but it does seem to be sort of the place that anyone visiting stays, as there are a couple rooms that are clearly set aside for this purpose. Some of them, in fact, have bunk beds, so you get the sense that sometimes even larger groups stay here, but as you are not a large group, she just leads you each to a small room and indicates where you can put your things.
And he does?
Avon will set down his things.
Now, most of the rooms up here are not usually in use. We have quite a few guest rooms, as I'm sure you can see, but I would request that you not go in any of the rooms that the doors are closed. There are only two. My room is just at the end of the hall there, and then that one to the left that also has the closed door, that would be my study. So anywhere else, really, I suppose you are welcome to look around if you wish, but I would request those you do not enter.
Very well.
Now, the food should be ready downstairs if you are also ready.
And he will head down.
I was just say Avon will follow, so.
And another woman you take to be a cook or housekeeper or some sort of employee here, as she is doing all the work and does not appear related to Marta, has begun putting out dishes on the table, some roasted meat, bread, potatoes. There are a variety of drinks as well. There is some beer, some aquavit, water for anyone who doesn't want those, and she will gesture for you to have a seat and eat what you like.
And Dixon will do so, eating politely.
I appreciate the hospitality.
And she smiles and says, I appreciate the chance to give hospitality. I'm sure you can see I usually... Well, I don't quite live alone. There is Astrid, but, you know, the two of us with only each other for company, it's a welcome change.
How long have you lived in this village?
Oh, well, my whole life.
How old is this village? It seems like quite the... not aged, but historied place.
Oh, the village itself, I do not know for certain. I imagine if there were any records, they were at some point lost, but the church that is just on the edge of the village, that is... Oh, they say from the early Middle Ages?
Quite the history.
Yes, my family at least has lived here for many generations. This house has been passed down. The sawmill as well, more recently. That is not as old as the house, but still.
How long did the two men stay here for?
Oh, Niels and Gottfried. Such a strange... well, they arrived, I believe it was two weeks ago, and they were here up until, 4 or 5 days ago? Maybe a week?
And they didn't seem unusual when they arrived?
Well, anyone from outside of the village is unusual. Beg your pardon. Farnsta is very insular, I suppose. Well, I said I appreciate the chance to provide hospitality, and that is true, but overall, the village, we keep to ourselves, and we don't get a lot of visitors.
But when they arrived, they did not seem mad or crazed?
No, nothing of the sort. They seemed rather eager to speak to, well, I suppose any villager they they could, the more people they could convince to sell the land, the better, I suppose. I have no interest in doing so. I'm sure most of the villagers would not have, although there are always some who wish to leave and... strange.
We are tasked with looking into the disappearance of Hammerstrom and the unfortunate madness of Niels.
He's gone mad?
He is not of sound mind at this moment, no.
I knew that he left suddenly in the middle of the night, and by my correspondence with Mr. von Meyer, left on one of my horses. I suppose if he went mad, that could explain such odd behavior.
Did both of the ordeals happen on the same night?
Well, I know that the one left in the middle of the night. The next morning, Mr. Hammerstrom was also gone, so I assumed he had left at the same time, although I am since told he never made it back.
There seems to be several moving parts in all of this. The truth is not exactly easy to uncover. Niels said he saw a beast. He has repeatedly said red eyes. He did not have much else of use to say, but the eyes were certainly not natural in his estimation. August has also informed us he was hoping to purchase much of the forest around here and hire the village to work in its felling. That it is a matter of contention amongst the villagers, some wanting to sell and some don't. He has high regard for your workmanship, but not of your lack of vision as he sees it. I am assuming you are one of the holdouts.
The two gentlemen who I hosted seemed polite and pleasant enough. They were somewhat persistent in asking me to consider selling my sawmill and land. I did not wish to be rude and told them I needed time to think about such an important decision. I truthfully have no intention of any such thing. This land has been in my family for generations. It's not something one gives up so easily. Well, not something one should give up so easily, but you may speak to Dorothea Skit about that.
I am not here to try and make you sell.
I did not assume so.
Although they did ask if we would be willing to negotiate. But my concern is, by and large, elsewhere.
I did have a possibly strange question. Are there any tales of the land? Of beasts or monsters?
Well, there is a local legend, and I will admit it came to mind when you spoke of a beast. However, it is a protective creature, so they say in the story. A creature that guards the church.
Why would it be attacking these men?
Could not say. If indeed such a thing did, it would, based on the legend, be because they had threatened the church in some way.
How much of the surrounding forest does the church own?
I own a not inconsiderable amount of the forest. However, by far the greatest portion of it is owned by one Dorothea Skit.
And they are interested in selling?
She has not said as much, but she is hardly loyal to her birthplace, one could say.
If you did so retain your land and your sawmill and others did sell, would that not overly impact upon what it is you wish to do?
It would certainly complicate matters. As it stands, I buy some of my wood from Dorothea. If she sold, I would have to renegotiate with whoever then owned the land.
I do not think you are in direct competition, however, with August. That is not, however, to say that he is necessarily the most reliable of ethical individuals. Your work looking at your house is far more decorative and fancy than the work that the machines produce.
Well, thank you, but it certainly is not mine. This house, my ancestors would have carved those.
Ah, I see.
I do not know exactly what avenues you wish to pursue while you are here, but I can certainly tell you a few places you may wish to begin. If you want to talk to any of the villagers, whether to see if they are interested in selling or not, the village hall is where most of them gather when not working. We do not have a tavern or any such thing, but it is a building where people congregate, certainly do sometimes drink, play cards, that sort of thing. The church would be another avenue I might recommend.
I think both would be worth looking into.
And she looks at Alvon. I do not wish to offend. He is another member of the clergy, of course, but I must admit to having some misgivings about our local priest in regards to this matter. I saw him speaking with the two representatives of von Meyer a fair few times, and as he has no land to sell, really, unless he wished to sell the church, which that I do not think he could or would wish to, I have concerns.
How much influence does he have over the other individuals in the town?
I suppose it would depend on the individuals. Certainly some.
I'm just thinking if he has no land to sell, the interests that they could possibly have would be influence.
She pauses and looks hesitant and says, "You are working for Mr. von Meyer. However, you have no personal interest, I take it, in whether or not the land is sold?"
Absolutely not, madam. Our primary concern is the investigation of the unexplained. That's what we were hired for. In this case, we have one mad individual and one missing. I would rather find that missing individual, alive or dead. Alive would be preferable. I'm afraid the longer we take to find him, the lower those odds would be. The actual sale of the land and his business ventures are not our concern at all, really.
And that would not change if you knew the land might be more valuable than previously thought?
I have no claim on any of the land.
Very well. Then I shall be blunt. I have suspicions about why our priest was speaking with von Meyer's men so often because of something I found after they left. This note was in Hammerstrom's room when I cleaned it after their sudden departure, and well, it concerns me as to the motives the priest could have for speaking with them so often.
So you believe they were negotiating tearing down the church?
Well, I find it difficult to believe that a priest would be on board with such a thing. He did say he would build a new church, and Father Ingvar would certainly have some sway if he wished to try and convince residents to sell their land.
Just so I understand the situation, what exactly in this is it that you take offense to if a new church was rebuilt?
In order to be able to demolish our current church at all, he would have to have purchased the majority of the land of the village. I take issue with that as a start. Really, I take issue with the idea of anyone selling at all, but I understand there is very little I can do to prevent that.
I don't personally believe he should be willing to tear down a house of the Lord just for personal profit. It's not very priestly, shall we say.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like something your Jesus would do, would it?
I would hope not.
Although, so far, I find some of the things morally questionable, I have not yet seen anything that is illegal.
I don't believe anything about it is illegal.
Would have been easier if it was.
There is, of course, another option. I do not know Father Ingvar's motivations. Perhaps he does not wish to sell the church, and if they pressured him, perhaps he had something to do with their disappearance.
It might be worth talking to the man. We could be forming an unfair opinion of his character without actually knowing. If they were putting the same sort of pressure, if not more so, on him as some of the other individuals, he may well have actually been declining to acquiesce their request rather than actively considering tearing down and moving the church.
Perhaps all I truly know is what is in this note, that I saw them speaking many times, and now that they are, well, one missing and one, as you say, mad.
Well, certainly the church and the town hall seem worth following up on.
Yes, I would like to see the church, especially with the tale. I believe it could be a good lead.
I would suggest heading there in the morning, as it is rather late.
Then I suppose we should get to sleep.
Very well. All right, and nothing strange happens in the night.
Good.
No one's underwater.
That's like
Don't
a
worry
first.
about it. All right, you wake up. It is the next morning. And nothing of note has happened that you are aware of. No mysterious creatures seem to have materialized during the night that attacked you. Not that you can remember, anyway. Good. It is simply a normal morning.
I'm still thinking good.
You're still like, oh, great.
I suppose check out the church.
Yeah, we can do that first, and then in the afternoon
And you're heading over to the church now?
Yes, unless...
The stone church that you walk over to is an imposing sight, hard to miss, although it sits on the outskirts of the village. A mossy, crumbling wall surrounds a graveyard that faces the dark forest. The whole place has a quiet and solemn air. So, outside of the church itself is the graveyard. There's forest right on one side of it, and the church building is very old. It's not in disrepair by any means, but you can certainly see areas where it could use some upkeep. But it is clear that it has stood here for a long time.
I suppose enter the church could be a good start.
And you do see a man in priest's clothing. He is seemingly sort of just tidying up the area. It seems as though he not only preaches here, but is also responsible for perhaps maintaining and cleaning the building. You get the sense he kind of does just anything in regards to the church. The man you see is older. He has round glasses and is definitely balding on the top of his head. He seems almost timid Definitely not a very sort of strong force of personality. And he looks up as you enter.
Morning, Father.
Good morning. What can I do for you?
We are here to investigate the disappearance of Godfrey.
Oh, Mr. Sorry, what was the name again? Hammerstrom. Mr. Hammerstrom. Yes, I had heard that he went missing.
And we were told that you talked to them a decent bit.
I would not say so. I certainly met them, but I had little contact with them.
That is just what we were told, and we wish to find him.
I see. Well, there's very little I can tell you about Mr. Hammerstrom.
Well, any info helps. We really don't have much to go on about him.
You are picking up that he is definitely very uncomfortable talking about Gottfried. And if you wish to make an observation roll...
To success.
Observation, okay. So you are absolutely convinced that there is something that he is not saying.
And 1 success
For observation?
for observation.
You are also absolutely convinced there is something he is not saying.
Is there a reason you're being so closed?
Cloistered was the word I was going to use.
I will not say I did not get along with the man. I was uncomfortable with what he wished me to do.
And that being...
He wanted me to convince the villagers to sell their land, and I was not comfortable with doing so. If they do not wish to sell it, then they should not.
Well, I can assure you we don't really care for how it ends, either if you decide to sell or if you don't. That's not why we are here.
Well, I certainly have nothing to sell. I do not own land in the village. I stay here in the church, and they don't want that. It doesn't grow trees.
Trees are not the only resource that they might be interested in.
It's certainly the only resource I can think of in this area. I suppose there is venison, if they wish to hunt. I know Dorothea's daughter certainly spends enough time doing so, but trees are mainly what we have here.
There could be other resources below ground.
Below ground?
What he means to say is you're on top of a iron deposit.
Well, that is unexpected.
By some reports, by on top of, we mean on top of. And he looks at the floor. Did they make a offer to destroy the church and rebuild it somewhere else?
Certainly not. Nor would I ever agree to such a thing.
It was something they were going to offer you.
Well, look, as I said, I do not own the church. If the entire village or even most of it sold, I suppose they would be able to do such a thing, but I would certainly hope that those who live here would never want to see a house of God torn down. Even if to build another one, this building has stood here for hundreds of years. It cannot be replaced so easily.
You are preaching to the choir, as they say in my homeland, sir.
No, they certainly never mentioned any such thing to me.
The stakes of your village are somewhat higher than you appear to have understood.
I suppose so. It depends on your perspective. As far as I'm concerned, the existence of iron beneath the church changes nothing.
It did for those that want what is below it. However, be that as it may, they were merely lackeys doing what their boss ordered. One of them is missing and the other is mad.
I do not know why that would be.
Well, we heard tales of a beast that protects the church.
Tales? As I am sure you yourself are well aware of, the church is protected by the Lord, and no other is required.
Of course, I'm not saying that, but tale says that it decided to look after it.
He seems a little nervous.
On success.
Okay.
We just wish to try to figure out what happened to him. If you have anything on that, I suggest you tell us.
It is difficult to... This village has a peculiarity, I suppose. It is not one that I necessarily believe that anyone from outside would understand or take kindly to if one tried to explain that a monster is protecting a house of God. But when this church was built, well, it isn't a pleasant practice, and it is odd to think of anyone building a church partaking in such a thing, but when this church was built, a sacrifice was made, a cat buried in the foundation. It created Farnsta's guardian, a creature that protects the church.
What kind of creature?
I do not know. I have not seen it.
Well, Niles is pretty sure he has.
Truth be told, I would not believe it anything more than local legend had my predecessor not so fervently assured me of its existence. The only other thing I can say is that I am told it will do, well, anything to protect the sacred ground of the church.
So it felt threatened by these individuals.
That I could not say. I did not see them do or say anything threatening towards the church itself. As I said, they said nothing to me about wishing to demolish it.
Obviously isn't a thing of the normal rules, shall we say. It might not need to hear it to tell.
I could not begin to imagine how such a thing operates.
I have no direct wish to come into conflict with such a creature.
I was just going to say, if just the sight of it caused madness, I'm inclined to agree.
Well, I certainly could not recommend it, simply based on the fact that it has apparently been here for hundreds of years, and nothing has, as of yet, prevented it from completing its task.
Do you have any documentation of this legend?
Not that I am aware of, but I will look and see if I can dig anything up for you.
That would be greatly appreciated.
I will look through what records and books we have, and if I discover anything, I will let you know.
Just looking.
You don't really see anything of much interest in the church. Well, I suppose that depends on how interesting you find churches. There is a baptismal font. There are several pews. You see a door that Alvon certainly would know where it leads to, but depending on how familiar with churches you are, you may just know is a door that goes somewhere.
Is there anything else to discuss?
I'm sure there will be. I'm not convinced we have much of a handle on the situation.